Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers Q&A. It's been a minute since we've done one of these, but went a little bit shorter last night with the post-game reaction, so wanted to hop on here and chat for about an hour or so. I'm back from Minneapolis, and I'm ready to get into your questions. What up, everybody in the chat? Baljeezy, Bloodhound. This is the late afternoon gang. James Cook, Big Baby Sports, Rob Hader, Jonathan Frazier, Michael D, Slick Stunna, Hoop Optics. Okay, it says, can you call me Cyprian? Not the other name. Michael, Devin Garcia, Jimmy Cook. So I can tell you they have a handshake. It is like a weird, it's like there's 3 steps to it and they pat each other on the chest, but I can't confirm Luka and LeBron have a handshake. Slick says, do you think it's over for us? Realistically, yes. However, I think, especially looking at the last 2-minute report that just came out that said Luka was tripped by Jaden McDaniels, which would have been the 5th team foul on Minnesota. Luka would have went to the free throw line. Lakers would have likely gone up, at least tied the game, if not gone up by 1 with about, 30-something seconds left. I think there's a good chance they end up winning game 4, tying the series 2-2. Maybe Minnesota scores and ends up winning the game anyway. We'll never know. But I think the Lakers win game 5 at that point. I don't know. Like, statistically, the most likely scenario right now is LA wins game 5 and loses game 6 and the series ends in 6. But I think there's like, typically, if you are going to come back from a 3-1 series deficit, you want to be the home team. You want to have 2 of those final 3 games at home. So that is an advantage. But realistically, based on how the first 4 games have gone, I would obviously pick Minnesota. GC, I had to throw out some caption or some topics for the headlines. So I picked offseason, but we don't have to talk offseason. Susan, do you think JJ is to be blamed for the loss? I don't. I think I've talked about this before. When it comes to like who to blame and whatnot, I think we try to find the one person to blame or the primary person to blame. And I don't think this is that simple. I think there was a lot of things that went against the Lakers. And again, even if Luka gets the foul call there and he makes the free throws and the Lakers hold on to win, even if it's a bit ugly down the stretch and they barely survive game 4, we're talking about how JJ boldly made this adjustment that ended up saving the Lakers, saving the series, potentially saving the season. And he's looked at as a hero rather than as someone who didn't trust the bench and cost them in the second half. So the more I've sat with it, I think it was a mistake not to play at least Gabe. I think Gabe's the guy I settle on. You could also talk me into Jordan Goodwin, but like what one of those or all 3, but adding in Vando, like I think you could have put one of those 3 in for 6 to 8 minutes or split it between a couple of those guys for a total of 8, upwards of 10 minutes and get each of the 5 guys that you were rolling with 1 to 2 minutes of rest. And then so still when we look at the second half box score, it would be Luka played 22 out of 24 minutes. LeBron played 22 out of 24 minutes. Austin, etc. Somewhere between 21 to 22 minutes for each of those 5 guys. And I think that would have been a more appropriate breakdown of the rotation. The crazy thing to me that I didn't find out until after I went live, because I basically the breakdown was game ends We go directly into post-game media. So JJ talks pretty quickly. Then we go in the locker room for a bit. We come back out, and the players are coming in. Because it's the playoffs, they all go to the podium. So it changes the locker room dynamic a little bit in terms of during the regular season, sometimes guys will talk at their lockers, but in the postseason, everybody who talks at the podium. So I go through that, do my transcription we have the beat writer transcriptions where we each take either JJ or a player and we transcribe what they said. And we have all these documents for each person and it's by date and organized and all this stuff. So then I go straight back to the hotel and I pack quickly and then I go live. So I didn't have some of the full context of that JJ. That was the first time in the tracking era since 1996, 97. That's when the tracking era started, that a coach has played 5 players for an entire half in a playoff game. And that's like including obviously finals, conference finals, like situations where it might make a little bit more sense. So I didn't realize that. I would have figured Tom Thibodeau would have done it in one of his playoff runs at some point. But that is pretty crazy that the Lakers and JJ it was the first time that happened in NBA history. I think it was a mistake. I think you could tell again upon rewatching it that the Lakers just didn't have the legs, the gas, the stamina from like the midway point of the fourth on. That was already they're at a physical disadvantage. They're smaller. They're not as quick. They're not as athletic as Minnesota. But then you factor in they have heavier legs. They're more tired. Like it's tough to ask. It's tough to ask 5 guys to go through that. And I think each guy had their moments of like short shots or turnovers or fouls or failed rotations or failed box outs or whatever. And I think you could directly trace that back to stamina and like LeBron's 40, Luka's coming off a cold or, whatever, food poisoning, whatever it was, he's coming off being sick. And I think those guys playing 46 minutes was just too much in this game. And it nearly worked. And again, if it worked, we'd be calling JJ a genius and the hero of the Lakers series. But that's kind of how it goes in the playoffs. So I think he's certainly at fault and part of the reason why they lost game 4. But again, we could look at some of the missed Luka trip as part of it. We could look at some of the missed open shots. We can look at some of the turnovers. We could look at LA continuing to get killed on the defensive glass. We can look at a lot of like Ant has leveled up and been the best player in the series. Julius Randle, I think, has been the 4th best player in the series and been at a level higher than he had previously been in the playoffs. And the Wolves have pushed a lot of the right buttons and gotten a lot of big plays from their supporting cast. So there's a lot of reasons why the Lakers are down 3-1. I don't think it's fair. And a lot of reasons why they lost game 4. I don't think it's fair just to put that on JJ. First super chat from Easy Peasy. Thank you for the super chat. Would have liked to see a few more Vando minutes in the 4th. Yeah, I mean, how I would have done it, just to be clear, because I've listened to a few pods and I've seen people say certain things on social media. How I would have done it is I probably would have done a little bit of a split more positionally where it's like, okay, Vando's coming in for DFS and Rui and maybe LeBron. Maybe he plays 6 minutes, spells each of those guys for like 2, and then or maybe he spells a couple of those guys. Then you get like Goodwin in there for a shift. Maybe he's the one for LeBron for a couple minutes just to keep some like ball handling out there. And then Gabe comes in for Austin and Luka, and that's for like 4 minutes, and you're staggering it. So like each guy, it would look kind of ridiculous upon like rewatching the game or even watching it live, but like you would be sending a new player to the scorers table. So it's like, okay, first Gabe comes in for Austin. Now Gabe's in for a couple minutes. Now Austin checks back in. Luka comes out. Gabe's like technically in for Luka now at this point. Then Luka checks back in, and then let's say like Vando comes in, then DFS comes out. Then DFS is out for a couple minutes. Then DFS checks back in, Rui comes out. Vando's now in for Rui at this point. And then LeBron's still out there. And then finally, I guess Rui's out. Rui comes back in, LeBron checks out, and then maybe like Goodwin checks in for Gabe or for Vando. I'm losing my own train of thought here with this, but like it would have been a little complicated. But you get each guy like a 1 to 2 minute break, and you're just constantly shuffling the guys in, and you're maintaining 4 of the 5 guys on the floor at all times, but you're rotating that 5th spot. And again, depending on which of the starters, we'll call them, is out, you're trying to like maintain some positional balance. So again, Vando in for like DFS and Rui because he's replacing them as a big man, and rim protection, defense in the paint, defensive rebounding, all that stuff. Then, Gabe or Goodwin as more of a perimeter guy for the perimeter guys, just another ball handler or shooter, depending on which one's in. So I think that's the way I would have approached that. That would have included some more Vando. I think the one mistake, or one of the mistakes up to this point in the series, has not been unleashing Vando on Ant more. With the way the Lakers switch everything, Minnesota will just switch him off, and that's where maybe it's counterintuitive, but I think maybe with Vando on the floor, you switch less, especially if it's Vando versus Ant, and you focus on keeping that matchup one-on-one as best you can, because he is the best one-on-one defender against Ant that the Lakers have. It's just that because they switch everything, it's just, where's Austin? Let's bring him into the action. Where's Luka? Let's bring him into the action. Even Rui has been targeted a bit. Like they're not going to get the Ant versus Vando matchup that they want. They as in the Lakers, because the Timberwolves are just going to pick on somebody else. So I think that might be a potential strategy shift we see. Like I think the Lakers switching everything has played into the Wolves' hands to an extent, and they've been able to dictate the matchups. This is something we've been talking about for months. When the Lakers made the shift to switch everything, we've seen this burn them at times, and they've been able to counter it with their helping and the rotating and the swarming, but Minnesota has responded with their own counters, and Minnesota's obviously winning that battle right now. So I think LA has to, at this point, you're down 3-1. Like you have to consider any and every adjustment within reason. And I think one could be playing potentially more coverage rather than switching in particular scenarios, depending on who the defenders are. But I think specifically with Vando, if you could find ways to keep him on Ant directly, and also maybe a little bit more LeBron on Randall. I think that's I think LeBron's done the best job on Randall. The issue with putting LeBron on Randall is it takes away him as the low man, as the helper. And if LeBron's not the low man and the helper, then I think the Lakers' rim protection is lacking to an extent. Like I think DFS has done a solid job, good job even. I'd say even above solid. But like he's also sometimes on Ant, so then he can get dragged out of the fray. So like they got to find a way to keep. And that could be scram switching, that could be pre-switching. Like there's other way. Like I think they got to get a little bit more creative with the base defense, because right now Minnesota is just picking them apart and dictating the terms of engagement with picking on certain defenders and then forcing the Lakers to overhelp and over rotate, and then they're getting them in the blender, and that's how they're getting some of these kick out plays or offensive rebounds. And I think the Lakers got to be better with that. Jonathan Frazier, thank you for the super chat. Jovan, I don't know if you have any credible sources or if they practice, but how are the team vibes today? Are they high-spirited or is it dark and gloomy? Well, I do have credible sources. So today, to my knowledge, was not an official practice. They're off today, but the gym is always open. So there's always guys, I'll just say there's always guys going to the gym to get treatment and get shots up and whatnot. I don't have a specific read on the vibes today. I would trend more toward high-spirited than dark and gloomy, but certainly the mood last night around the group was not great. And I think that's natural when you lose a tough, close game like that and you fall down 3-1. There's just the human element of, like, this has not been a fun team to be around and to cover when they lose. And I think in some ways that's a good thing, because this team hates losing and they hold themselves to a certain standard, and they expected to win this series. And I think they still expect to win this series. So, yeah, I mean, I haven't heard specifically like the vibes around the team, but I also think like LeBron has come back from 3-1 before. Luka talked about 3 must-win games, and like he's excited for that challenge. DFS was talking about it. Rui said the series isn't over yet. Like, I think that this is a group that has shown a level of resilience. They nearly won game 4. They should have won game 4. They didn't. Sometimes that's the breaks of the playoffs, but I do expect them to come out with the requisite focus and energy and intensity in game 5, win game 5, and then from that point, we'll see where the series goes. Sam Fly, thank you for the super chat. What would you think about a Bam trade, including Reeves? It would depend on what the exact package is. I would say that, I mean, like on its surface, like I think Bam is a better player than Austin. I don't think that's a controversial take. And I think Bam would fit with Luka and LeBron well. He's not the lob threat that Luka likes, so I wonder if you almost have to play him at the 4, but that potentially causes some spacing issues. So he's not like the exact type of 5 that Luka would like, but obviously he's an all-star level player, all-NBA level player. He is one of the best defensive bigs in the league. I think he's an underrated passer and playmaker as a big, and I think that would elevate the Lakers like big 3, if you want to call it that. I think it just depends on what that package would be, but I don't see why Miami would do that. If I'm Miami, because even if let's just say the Lakers are throwing the mother load that they can, which would be something like Austin, a pick, a swap, Dalton, I don't think Miami's doing that. Jamal, thank you for the super chat. Thanks for the grind and the info. We need more off the bench. It's understandable that we have to build around Luka in the offseason. I agree. I think just the interesting thing has been, I mean, if you look at who's coming off the bench, the only guys I would have any expectations for in terms of scoring would be DFS and Gabe. And with the way that the Lakers run their offense, that's almost exclusively going to be catch and shoot 3-point opportunities. Maybe there's a scenario where someone's wildly closing out. We've seen Gabe rack the closeout, take a pull up, step in, 18-footer. DFS sometimes attack closeouts, get to the rim. Like, I'd actually like to probably see that a little bit more from him. I think the Lakers in some respects have like respected the Wolves rim protection a little bit too much. And that's not to say that the Wolves don't have great rim protection. They do, but just because you are good at one thing, you still have to try to test it. And we've seen with Luka, within certain actions, especially earlier in games when he can get downhill, when he can get certain ISO matchups. Like if Rudy's off, I think it has to be attack the rim and put pressure on Naz Reid, try to get him in foul trouble, put pressure on Julius Randle, try to get him in foul trouble. We've seen one, like Chris Finch is not, at least up to this point in the series, and maybe that changes games 5 to 7, but like he has been a more traditional coach in the sense of when a player is in foul trouble, like that will affect their playing time, at least up to this point in the series. So maybe if he's going for the kill shot on the road, game 5, it's a little bit different. But I think if the Lakers can get fouls on Naz Reid, we've seen that already affect his playing time. If they could get fouls on Julius Randle, maybe that affects his playing time for a half. Like, I think they need to be a bit more intentional with trying to get downhill and put pressure on the rim. And I thought LeBron did a really good job of that in game 4. I think Luka, especially in the first half, did a really good job of getting downhill and exposing certain matchups. But I think the Lakers as a whole have been kind of settling, not even kind of, like they have been settling too much for just the first 3-point look they get, or it's all driving kick, and it's just a lot of jump shots. And I would like to see them try to put more pressure on the rim and on the paint. And then you do that, and what was it? Frank Vogel had the saying like paint to great. And I think that's something that the Lakers need to do a little bit more of. You will get those high percentage catch and shoot looks if you are getting downhill and you are getting layups and lobs or getting to the free throw line, and just make them work. Because I think everything's been too easy for the Wolves for certain stretches of the series where like they just kind of know if we wall off a drive and we're being compact around the rim, the Lakers aren't going to even really try it there. And of course, like there's always context and nuance to anything I say, because I'm not just saying like, all right, Austin, put your head down and like ram into 5 Wolves and just fling something up. Like this is where organized offense and play calls and actions and stuff all come together, and that's what can lead to some of these things. But I think in general, with the role players, it has basically been like you either have a catch and shoot 3 or that's it. And I would like to see LA put more pressure on the rim. Now, Vando and Goodwin, I don't think you should expect anything offensively. I think anything they give you is a bonus. But Gabe and DFS, I think even part of that, the health of the Lakers offense is like those guys when those guys are hitting 5-6 threes as they have in recent weeks, it's because they are generating really good looks, and we just haven't seen that quality of offense yet. Part of that's the Wolves, but part of that's also the Lakers and the way that they've just been going ISO mismatch hunting. Rama's Aviation, thank you for the super chat. I don't know if I'm wrong, but I swear I saw Gabe at the table at the end of the third, and there was just no dead ball. Seeing Braun do this and get blamed is heartbreaking as well. After the DFS 3, I thought we won. You are correct. They were going to sub Gabe in. There was no dead ball. And then I think it was around a minute left or so. JJ just waved him back to the bench, and then he never went back to him again. I defended LeBron yesterday. Like, I thought LeBron was the best Laker yesterday when you factor in his defense. 3 steals, 3 blocks, made several big plays down the stretch defensively. Yes, 0 points, 0 for 2 shooting. I would also push back and say it's not like he's bringing the ball up and like running the offense. Like, the offense is not really running through LeBron. He's been more of an off-ball player in this series, at least when he's sharing the floor with Luka and Austin. So I don't really hold that against LeBron. The thing you can like kind of hold against him or question in retrospect is I didn't love the 3-point attempt. I thought that was not a great shot. And if you want to be critical of him, you can say like that tends to be a bad habit of his, of sometimes he will take, and he's made plenty of them. So I don't want to say like he can't make that shot or he doesn't make that shot ever, but there are plenty of times where he will take a contested, questionable, deep 3, like sub 3 minutes left in a game, sub 2 minutes left in a game. And it's just not the best shot, even though, again, he can make that. And it is a shot he practices. But it's hard to nitpick when he was doing so much for this group. It set the tone offensively in the first half, was getting downhill, was getting to the rim, was blowing by the Wolves' bigs, was getting to the free throw line. The only Laker in double digits on the glass. He was basically playing center on both sides of the ball and was doing an awesome job. So I understand the shot, the turnover, the foul. Like, the turnover is another one, but that was a miscommunication. Luka owned it. I think LeBron needed to throw it to Luka's left shoulder, not the right. But like, they've also had these like weird situations where they mess up the inbounds. This has been like a thing for them for like multiple years. So I also probably wouldn't have had LeBron as the inbounder. I would have rather been trying to inbound it to him. And maybe you have DFS or Gabe as the inbounder. That's another thing in retrospect. But the foul, I think, good intentions. He was trying to stop Ant and stripped at the ball and made contact, and they whistled it a foul. So I personally can live with the LeBron mistakes. Like, I don't think there was anything egregious. Again, the shot attempt was maybe the one thing that I think you take back if you can. But I thought in the aggregate of the game, like, no one's going to play a perfect game. He could have been more involved offensively, but I don't put that like mainly on him. I think that's part of a play calling thing. I think that's part of Luka having the ball a certain amount and them looking to target the bigs and that player not always being LeBron. I also look at Luka and LeBron not having much of a 2-man game, which I've been clamoring for since the Luka trade. It's never really developed for unknown reasons. So there's a lot of reasons why LeBron didn't have the biggest fourth quarter, but I wouldn't blame him for that. Kerwin, thank you for the super chat. With Dame tearing his Achilles and the Bucks having no assets in the future, do the Lakers have a shot landing Giannis? Would also like to get Lopez. Kerwin coming with the heavy hitting questions. Look, there's always a shot because I would have said I didn't think the Lakers had a real shot to get Luka, at least in a trade for him, and that they would probably have to be in free agency. So there's always a shot. I think realistically, Milwaukee is going to learn from the backlash of the Dallas situation. And I don't think, one, there's going to be a certain, like, if they were trading Giannis to the Lakers, there would be a whole other wave of new wave of backlash. So I don't necessarily see that happening. But I also think you got to think about the spot that Milwaukee's in and what they would want. And if I'm Milwaukee, I want prospects and picks, right? Like, because they are a win now roster that is not built to win now. So I'm not like, and even if it's, let's just say like Austin, which obviously you'd have to throw in a lot more salary to make it work. I might want someone even younger than that. And the Lakers just don't have the requisite picks. So I think if he gets traded, it's probably somewhere that has a combination of young, intriguing talent with multiple picks. So is that Miami? Is that Houston? Is that San Antonio? Is that OKC? Brooklyn? Like, I think there are other teams that make more sense in terms of having either intriguing young prospects and, like, again, I think people are looking at the, like, look, I think anything's possible in the league after the Luka trade, so I don't want to say it's not going to happen, but I think any owner with half of a competent line of thinking would look at that situation and be like, okay, we should not try to make like a win now trade and go get like another star or another like win now player. We need to shop him around, turn this into a bidding war, and get the best possible package back. In terms of Brook Lopez, I saw Bovada had him as the betting favorite for the Lakers' most likely starting center next year. I wouldn't agree with that. I think I've always been a Brook Lopez guy going back to his Stanford days, but I think at this point we've seen in the Indiana series, he's been played off the floor. Indiana is a tough matchup for slow-footed bigs, but he's in his late 30s. He is no longer the defender that he used to be. So sure, is he better than Jackson Hayes? Yes. Would I rather have him be the Lakers starting center than Jackson Hayes? Yes. Is his theoretical fit as a stretch five and rim protector, like, does that work with Luka and LeBron and Austin? Yes. But to me, it would potentially come down to the cost. And I believe he's an impending free agent, if I'm not mistaken. So that is something that could work for the Lakers in that sense. But I think they'd be better suited pursuing younger alternative. Yeah, so he's an unrestricted free agent. I guess for one of the exceptions, if you could make it work, I'd be interested, but he wouldn't be my top choice. Avinash, thank you for the super chat. Can you tell JJ to run more organized offense or subtly mention the numbers Crane just talks about? The ISOs are killing us. Yeah, I've already brought it up before, but in this series, but I can bring it up again. I think as Crane just laid out today on X, I think JJ and the Lakers just track this differently than Crane just does, and their version of what constitutes freelancing versus what constitutes organized is different. I think for them, it's more spacing and movement and less like actual play calling. Like, I think for them, play calling obviously would constitute organized offense, but I think the way they would calculate it or view it would be if the guys are properly spaced and someone comes up and screens for Luka and Luka gets draws that switch and then goes cooking against that guy in ISO and hits a step back three, like, that is organized offense because everyone is properly spaced and they are running an action. It is a basic screen and roll action, but I think they seem to view that as organized offense, where Crane just has a different definition for that. I'm somewhere a little bit in the middle because I think I can understand why the Lakers would view it that way, but certainly the offense has devolved at critical times in this playoff series, and their offensive rating in the fourth quarter. So another thing that I figured out last night as I was writing post show, Lakers have been outscored 105-69 in the fourth quarters in this series. They have an 83.1 offensive rating in this series in the fourth and a 128 defensive rating. So both those metrics, the offense is actually worse comparatively, but like both would be like league worst offense, league worst defense. The defense is a little bit closer to like most offenses are going to be at least cracking triple digits in terms of offensive rating, like, around 105 or somewhere and then above. The worst defenses are going to be around 120-ish or so. So comparatively, like the offense has actually been worse in fourth quarters than the defense, but they have in crunch time, they've been outscored, or clutch time, they've been outscored 25-11 in the series, and they have a minus 88.1 net rating in clutch time, which is just, to extrapolate that out to 100 possessions, which is close to an average game. That means they'd be outscored based on their clutch play by 88 points over the course of a 100 possession game. So basically the simplest form, the Lakers have been awful in fourth quarters and they have been awful in crunch time. And those are that's the difference in the series, right? They had, in game two, it got a little close there. It got a little tight there because they could not score in the fourth quarter. And they just have ran out of gas in all four fourth quarters. And part of it, I think, is a depth thing. Part of it is, I think it's the Wolves and how they've controlled the pace a bit, but also just how hard they play, how physically they play, or how physical they play. So I think there's a lot of factors. But yes, I can bring that up. I think at this point, JJ and the coaching staff have their view on it, and it doesn't seem like that's going to change. Tyler K, thank you for the super chat. Claxton and Schroeder equals us sweeping them. One follow-up would just be like, who are they replacing, I guess, in terms of like, is it Rui and Gabe, or like what's the combination there in terms of matching salary? But I think if Claxton was the starting center, to say nothing of Dennis also being in the rotation as like a backup guard, I would want obviously Dennis as like a backup, but I think that, yeah, I mean, I don't think the Lakers would sweep the Wolves, but I think it would be 2-2, if not 3-1 in LA's favor, I think, with Claxton. Rama's Aviation, thank you for the super chat. And Braun is playing like the best defender in the NBA right now. Damn, I'm frustrated. AF, appreciate you for letting me vent. LMAO, love you, gang. Love you too. And yeah, LeBron has been incredible defensively. Like, again, I think there's this notion that people hold on to preconceived notions, and there's a notion that LeBron doesn't play defense, and he's been good on Ant and Randall and battling Gobert, and like he's just been everywhere defensively for LA in this series. So of course there's going to be times he's fatigued, times that he makes the incorrect rotation, or sometimes Lakers have some miscommunications on that. But yeah, appreciate you. Sanjay, thank you for the super chat. LeBron and Luka need to attack the paint and set up, spot up shots for Rui and DFS. Also start Austin off the bench and start DFS and Hayes. Agree with the first point. I think the Lakers, JJ calls it touching the paint. I think they need to get downhill, touch the paint, and that's going to create things. We saw that third quarter. Like, if they can replicate that third quarter, they will win the series. I just don't know if they can, because they have yet to really do it. They've really only had like 2 good offensive quarters, maybe 3 in the whole series so far, and that's a problem. But they scored 36 points. I think they shot like 13 for 22, 7 for 14 on threes. Rui had 10 points. And you saw, I still don't know why Minnesota switched to hedging and blitzing. I know Luka and LeBron were getting going, but it's just, if you watch the Lakers and how their offense functions, I would never hedge and blitz. Like there were sometimes they surprise blitzed Luka or doubled Luka, but there was one time early he hits Jackson in the short roll, who then hits Rui for the layup. Then there was the other time where Dante steals it at half court. Luka's just bad awareness on his part. Also, I forget who the closest Laker was, but like that person should have like tried screening for Luka. They should have called that out. I think it was DFS because DFS ended up getting back and contesting Dante, and then he fouled Ant. So that they're like some of those traps and blitzes are fine, but the like predictable, like Luka can read it. You see, he just pings it. Then the ball's pinging all over the floor to the open man. They're getting layups. They're getting threes. So I think they got to do more of that. So that's where I'm with you with LeBron and Luka. You can still attack switching with screening and creating advantages. It's a little bit trickier, but it just depends on your screening angle, slipping screens. Like you just got to get a little bit more creative with it. I think some of this stuff has been a little too vanilla. I don't agree with the Austin point. I think Austin has been better than people have given him credit for. If nothing else, as a catch and shoot guy, he's actually been, I think he's 10 for 23 on catch and shoot threes in the series, which is pretty good. Shooting 35% on threes overall. I think it's more so been his inside the arc game where he has struggled. And the part I disagree with most here is I think Hayes needs to be retired. I think not literally, but for the series, I think Hayes needs to go to the bench and not play anymore. I think we've seen enough. He has more fouls than points in this series. I think they got to go with the 8, move Hayes out of the rotation entirely, and go with the starters that started the second half of Game 3, and then Game 4, and then go with Vando, Gabe, and Goodwin. That would be my thing. Dax, thank you for super chat. What about the last timeout we were robbed? What is this in relation to? Is this, I guess I'm assuming this is the Luka timeout because he was tripped. I mean, that's another thing here. The Lakers would have also had a timeout later in the game because Luka wouldn't have had to have called timeout due to the trip. It would have been called a foul. So I'm assuming that's what you're referencing. I don't know if that's what you're referencing, but off the top of my head, that's the timeout that they lost. But yeah, I mean that's big factor there. Danica, thank you for the super chat. What do you do about Min's decision to or what do you think about Min's decision to suddenly blitz in the third? I think they wanted to mix it up against Luka and take away, just like make him a little bit uncomfortable. But I think we saw it turned the Lakers offense into a buzzsaw, and they almost scored 40 points. Their series high for a quarter, it was 36 in that third. It's the best their offense has looked all series outside of, I guess, first quarter of Game 2. But I think it was even better, not just because of the 2 extra points, but just the ball movement, the execution. So I don't get it. I'm also surprised they stuck with it for as long as they did. Like to my recollection, they stuck with it for a good 5-6 minutes. Like it was a pretty long time there where they were just willingly getting picked apart by the Lakers. I think part of it too is Rudy being on the floor and some of the limitations there with them. But if I'm the Wolves and I'm rewatching that third quarter, I do not go back to that the rest of the way. Like there's a reason the Lakers thought they were going to start the series guarding them that way. That's why JJ said after Game 1, they were a little bit thrown off offensively because they were anticipating more hedging and blitzing, and they had prepared for that. And instead they went to switching immediately. I think that was a smart move by Minnesota. It has worked. It was a gamble for sure because they're not conventionally a switch heavy defense with their bigs. They're more of a coverage team, but it was something clearly they game planned for. They prepared for it. It worked. It has worked through the series. They're up 3-1. But if they guard the Lakers the way they guarded them in the third quarter for a full game, I am barring the Lakers having like an outlier performance from a negative perspective of just like missing a bunch of open threes and going like 6 for 40 or something. The Lakers are going to shred them, and they're going to beat them in that game. Again, like within certain, maybe the Wolves have their own night where they hit 23s and they outshoot the Lakers. But barring something like that, realistically, if they're going to guard the Lakers like that, that gives the Lakers an advantage. That's when Crangus and I previewed the series, that was like how we thought they were going to start it. And to Minnesota's credit, they adjusted even before the series started. But when they've gone to that, we've seen, again, we saw it in the first quarter for a couple of possessions, then we saw it again for a stretch there in the third. Lakers just shred them. Lakers have mastered the 4-on-3, 3-on-2 reads. Like they're at high level with that. Jackson, that's one of his strengths offensively. But of course, LeBron, Austin, Luka, you get them with an advantage, they're going to make the right plays. So if I'm Minnesota, you can't. I mean, for the Lakers' sake, I'm sure they want them to do that. But if you're Minnesota, you can't. Zach Roberts, would Mark Williams have made a difference with this series? Yes, I think so. And I think so for a couple of reasons. But I think the trade wasn't just about this series. And I think that would be a short-sighted viewpoint on this trade. It was about finding a long-term center partner to pair with Luka and investing a certain amount of assets and draft capital to find that player and to pair them with Luka. So certainly Mark Williams could have helped them down the stretch of the regular season, could have helped them in this series. Maybe they get the 2 seed. Maybe they're playing Golden State right now. And I mean, that would have been a tough series, but maybe they're in a better spot to potentially go to the second round. And like, who knows what happens with this season. But there were concerns from, as I've reported, as others have reported, with the Lakers and the physicals longer term. So I think from the Lakers perspective, the fear wasn't about this season or necessarily even next season, but a couple seasons, 3 seasons, 4 seasons down the road, if some of the things that they were concerned with bore out, they were afraid that that was going to be an ill-advised investment, an ill-advised gamble on Mark Williams as their center of the future. I think they were trying to find the center of the future. I think we can quibble with if Mark Williams can just even be the center of the future, health aside. That's its own conversation. But for the purposes of this question, I think he would have helped because he's better than Jackson. He's a better rebounder than Jackson. His rim protection numbers were worse than Jackson's actually, but like I just think he's such a large human that he can kind of do like the Zach Edey, just like be big around the rim, like the Boban, just like stick your arms up and be a 9-foot plus standing reach rim deterrent. And then offensively, different level of, can finish lobs, isn't the most explosive guy. Like Jackson's better at him than that, but is a monster offensive rebounder, does have some soft hook shots and post moves and stuff. So like, I think he would have helped just by being a better player that now I think where things could have gone a little sideways is like maybe he gets targeted defensively to the point where JJ benches him or moves him to the bench, decreases his minutes. Like I could see him ending up being like a 12, 15, 18 minute a night guy, but I still think that's giving you more than what Jackson has given you. So I do think he would have helped in this series, but again, I don't think that makes it okay to retroactively be like, well, they should have done it or they should have kept it. Like for them, they wanted a player to help them now and in the future. I think he would have helped now. I think there are some concerns about how his ability to help in the future, if that makes sense. Jay Spares, thank you for the super chat. JB, late here, not sure if you covered, but I think a lot of the ISO ball and lack of organization has to come down to Luka Nunes, talented enough to overcome in regular season, bad habits in crunch time. That's a part of it for sure. I don't disagree. Like I think we have seen a bit of an increase in the ISO ball and the lack of organization since Luka has arrived. Now, I would also point to his previous success playing this style of basketball in Dallas with the 2022 conference finals run and the 2024 NBA finals run. And this is a guy who is a playoff riser who if you look at, I've made this point before, but if you go basically series by series, as he pointed out, this is the first time he's had home court advantage in a series. Technically, they played Utah with home court, but he missed the first couple games. So I guess he's not counting that one. But like the first time he started a series healthy at the beginning of a series, having home court. So he's always been a road underdog. And I think you can make a real case that all of his, I don't think his series that he's lost have ever gone fewer than 6, other than the finals against the Celtics. I could be wrong on that, but off the top of my head, other than that one. So like he's always been a road underdog, and I think his teams have always punched above their weight in terms of playoff success. So I think there's a proof of concept here, and there's a track record here that suggests like I understand why the Lakers are doing certain things offensively. Then I think you also factor in, I think JJ really wanted to coach Luka. I mean, he said it last year in an interview on the Andrew Schultz show that, or a podcast, that if he could coach any player in the NBA, he would want to coach Luka. He talked about it with LeBron, just how brilliant Luka is and how you can't really defend him in pick and roll coverages. So like, I think there's a lot of things that, and they have their pre-existing relationship, like a lot of things that blend into JJ wanting to play a certain style, Luka wanting to play a certain style. And I actually think there's a synergy there between those two in terms of how they view it and how they want to play. Now, I agree that there have been some bad habits that have been formed, and I think that has played into the lack of organization and the ISO heavy basketball that we've seen. And I think that they ideally for the rest of the series like need to work on that. I think it might be too late, to be completely honest. I think if there was going to be a dramatic change, it would have been in game 3 or game 4. Maybe it happens in game 5. I'm not saying it won't, but typically when your season's on the line, you make that change if that's what you think is the right change. So I also just wonder if they even view it that way. I think they're fine with the ISO ball. Like they've done a lot of mismatch hunting. I think that's probably going to be more of an offseason thing that they have to reevaluate and then decide if that's the right thing to do or not. But I think to your point, you can do some of that within more structure and within more sets. And there can be other ways to run a couple of actions, see how they're guarding certain things, test a couple things. And then at the end of you could always go back to Luka ISOing at the top. Like that, you could go to that at any point of the possession. But I think it's been a little bit too much of a crutch for them at times. Brandon, thank you for the super chat. AR third foul / elbow by Rudy, kickball, Luka Doncic trip, DFS foul, 50-50 ball with Randall. I remember that one. LBJ foul, which if you watch gets bottom part of the hand first, the wrist. Are you saying bad calls here, dirty plays here? I think it's a combination of bad calls and dirty plays. Look, Minnesota, like you got to give them their credit as to or for dictating the terms of engagement from a physicality perspective. They are a physical team, and it is interesting that I'm gonna take the L on my analysis of the Minnesota situation entering the series and even to close out the regular season, because I made sometimes the answer staring at you right in the face. And the point I would make, and I've made this point probably 4 or 5 times about Minnesota over the past like couple months, is on paper, if you were designing a team to stop the Lakers, they would look something like the Minnesota Timberwolves. You have the apex superstar in Ant. You have a monster front line with Rudy and Randall and Nas and Jaden. And you have a deep team. You have an athletic team. You have a quick team. You have a team that shoots a lot of threes. So like all those things play into weaknesses that the Lakers have. The issue was Julius Randle has not been a good playoff performer. Rudy Gobert has had his struggles, and I would contend has had his struggles in this series. And the Wolves have looked better with Naz Reid on the floor, especially in the fourth quarter. And Jaden McDaniels has been a bit of a shaky supporting cast player in terms of his shooting, his offensive production. He did step it up in February, and I think that's more of like the player he's been in this series and more of the player he's becoming. But there were some questions with Minnesota and their offense and their seriousness. And we also looked at the clutch time struggles and them being 23rd in net rating. Lakers were 13th in net rating in clutch time. Like Minnesota has been a team that has tricked away close games before over the past couple of years. So on paper, the reasons why they could beat the Lakers or would be a tough matchup for the Lakers were staring at me right in the face. There just were other things I projected out or were just also seeing that I was like, sure, but like the Lakers have Austin and Luka and LeBron, and like they have 3 of the 4 best players in the series. And I have questions about Randall and Gobert and McDaniels. And it was like, well, no. So all the reasons why I thought Minnesota could give the Lakers a hard time, they've given them a hard time for those reasons. And then they've won the clutch battles. Randall has stepped up and been the 4th best player, if not sometimes the 3rd best player in the series. McDaniels has had 2 monster games and has pretty much like held up well throughout the series. Rudy's the one where it's like, okay, like he hasn't really inflicted that much damage with his rebounding. Offensively, he can't do anything. He went 1 for 6, got stripped a bunch of times, had 3 turnovers. Defensively, he's held up fine, whatever. But I think the reasons why I was skeptical of the Wolves, they have overcame and proven those wrong this whole series. So you got to give them a big hat tip. But they are physical, and it is sometimes a little over the line. And I think the Lakers have been affected by that for certain stretches. Will Brotherson says, please help. I wish I wish I could help. I wish I could solve this, but I don't think I can, unfortunately. It's gotta be the Lakers. This is an interesting one from Art of War here. I definitely think Warriors can beat Wolves. I've been thinking about this since once I like kind of projecting out series and how things are going to go. So once they went up 3-1, I was like, okay, realistically, teams that go up 3-1 win the series 95.5% of the time. What would a potential Golden State Minnesota series look like? Remember, Minnesota has home court for whatever that's worth. I think it would be an interesting series because the size is going to be a factor for Golden State too. Riley says, crazy talking smack about Gobert when you're begging to get a center half as good. I'm not talking smack about Gobert. I just think objectively he has hurt the Wolves on offense. It's not even like, that's not even a subjective point. If you look at the offensive rating with him on the floor, they have, I believe, somewhere in the 120s offensive rating for the series. They have a 108 offensive rating with Gobert. So like the offense has been noticeably worse with Gobert on the floor. Like that's indisputable. That is a fact. And I think the eye test backs that up. Like the Lakers are not concerned with Gobert. They tried running the first possession of the game for Gobert, post up against Austin. He does not generate a good look. He just spins. Austin slaps the ball away. Like I think the issue with Gobert is the offensive end. He is, now I will give him, it's 7 offensive rebounds, 10. Like game 4, he affected the glass more than he had in the previous 3 games. 7 offensive rebounds was impactful. Now there was the stretch where he gets an offensive rebound, then he misses, he gets another one, misses, and then he gets stripped. And like a little bit too much of that. I think he's been an offensive liability, but where I give Gobert credit, I think he's held up better against Luka and LeBron and Austin in switches and has ultimately been a rim deterrent, and that's what you want from him. So I think defensively he's been good in the series. I just think offensively he's been subpar, especially for his size. DJ Nasri coming in the final minutes with fresh legs is honestly what flipped this game. That's not even a hot take. And I'm also a little surprised that, like, I just think they've looked better with Naz Reid, and I think their best lineup has been Naz Reid, and it has been the best line, not only the best lineup for the Wolves, but the best lineup in the playoffs so far. I think above 20 minutes has been Naz Reid, Julius Randle, Jaden McDaniels, Ant, and Dante. That's been the best 5-man lineup that's played 20 or more minutes in the playoffs so far. So if I'm the Wolves, I lean a little bit more into that because it just like with Rudy out there. The thing is, it gives the Lakers, because JJ actually talked about this last pregame game 4, and I thought it was interesting that he was saying with the Wolves and the way that they are guarding the Lakers, they are spread out and they're very much okay playing one-on-one. And that's almost their preference is to, they're going to switch, they're going to play one-on-one, they're going to stay home, and they want to prevent Rui, DFS, Gabe, all those guys getting into a rhythm, getting certain shots. Lakers are the opposite. Because they don't have a Gobert, because they don't have a Jaden, they are much more compact in their shell, and they're actually more so like, we want the guy at the top, and then we want the other 4 players pinching in, 2 guys closer to the elbow, 2 guys closer to the block, and we are trying to form a shell around the rim to prevent dribble penetration, to prevent offensive rebounds, to prevent all that stuff. So I think Nas comes in and he messes with that, because it's one thing if you have 2 guys along the baseline, you can sandwich rebound Gobert, or like you could sandwich him for sandwich rebounding. You can rotate over if maybe he's in the dunker spot and he's catching the ball and then someone's rotating over. When Nas Reed, when he's on the weak side wing like that, if you can shift or tilt the defense a certain way, as Ant has done, and Ant, like that, to me, the biggest story of this whole series from like just an NBA perspective is like Ant is taking another leap where he is looking like a top 5 guy. But with Ant shifting the defense a certain way, now Nas Reed is the weak side guy. And then that's just, if Ant can make that read, no pun intended, it's an easy shot for Nas Reed. So that, I think Nas Reed has really killed them. Christian Brown, not to be confused with Christian Brown on the Nuggets. It ain't over yet. Can never count up the king out. Remember the 2016 finals. Yeah, I mean, I would say if you're looking for, again, metaphorical gun to my head, I would pick the Wolves in 6 right now. If you said like I had to bet my life on like a series outcome, I would go Wolves in 6. However, if you're looking at like a team, a series dynamic where it could be theoretically possible for a team to overcome a 3-1 deficit, I'd want the team to have home court in the series and have home court for game 5 and 7. I'd want the series to have been relatively close, which it has been. The Wolves had blowout in game 1. They turned the game into a rout at the end of game 3, but that was a close game for the first 44, 45 minutes. And then, as we know, game 4 was very close up until the end. And the Lakers had like their version of a mini blowout in game 2, but really that was, within 7 to 12 points for a lot of, especially the fourth quarter. So like it's been a relatively close series. It's come down to the Lakers' inability to keep their foot on the gas in the fourth quarter. And they've just been out executed, out hustled. They're running on fumes in the fourth. If they can figure out a way to, and again, maybe that's rejiggering the rotation, playing certain bench guys a little bit more. Like I don't have the answer. Otherwise, I would tell you guys what it is. If they can figure that out, I think they have a shot to do it. Again, NBA history suggests 95.5% chance the Wolves advance, and that is probably what's going to happen. But if there was a team to pull off a 3-1 comeback, you'd probably want home court. You'd probably want it to have been a close series, and you'd probably want 2 top-end playoff performers like LeBron and Luka. So Tiffany said, Jovan, you said the Wolves don't have clutch offense, and that's the reason why you picked the Lakers. That's not the reason. That was part of the reason. And the Wolves were 23rd in clutch net ratings. So in terms of all clutch time where they ranked. They were a bottom 8 team during the regular season in terms of clutch time. And I'm not the first and only person to make this point. Listen to several preview pods, Lakers specific and national. And one of the big pivot points for this series was crunch time. A lot of people felt if the Lakers were able to keep things close, they could out execute the Wolves in crunch time. Having Luka and LeBron and even Austin compared to Ant and Julius on the other side, I think most people would take the Lakers side in that theoretical clutch time or crunch time battle. But it's been wrong. The Wolves have won clutch time, so I'm wrong on that, and they have taken it up a different level. Mistra says Wolves in 7. So Mistra's picking the chaos of the Lakers making the comeback to force a game 7 and then losing there. In defense of the genre, 1022, double chicken Chipotle bowl or regular with chips and guac? Double chicken every day, all day. I actually just had a double chicken kava bowl today at LAX. Madison says, my prediction is OKC over Boston in 7. I have not wavered off my Boston over OKC in the finals prediction yet, but certainly OKC can win. JCU, how realistic is Bam would be good next to Luka? See, I think he'd be good next to Luka because they're both like all-star, all-NBA guys, and they're both smart and they can make it work. I think Bam is not enough of a lob threat for what Luka would want. Defensively, he'd be great because he's a great defender, but I don't know. So I would say low, maybe at some point in free agency. Like I think the Lakers will be in the mix for a free agent star at some point down the road in the next few years, but I think from a trade, I don't really see LA having enough to offer. Dodgers highlights. I'm not sure if it's true, but I saw an X of the current teams down 3-1. We have the highest percentage to win our series at 22.6%. I saw that. So the 95.5% number that I'm referencing is just like NBA history of teams that go up 3-1 win the series 95.5% of the time. Obviously, every situation is different. I think last night on the stream, I said I'd give the Lakers like a 15% chance. So that's a little bit lower than this 22.6%. I don't know how they calculated that number. It seems a little high to be completely honest, but even if you want to say 22.6%, that's still a 77.4% chance they lose. So that's still a pretty decisive advantage for Minnesota. They just have to win one of the final 3. Mishra says, would you want Claxton or Miles as a fit? That's a tough one for me. I like Miles' stretchability. Let me see what he's averaging in this series because I haven't kept up with like series averages. Right now against Milwaukee, he's averaging 15.8 points, only 3.8 rebounds. Yeah, the rebounding has been a long concern for him. 2.8 blocks, which leads the playoffs. 52% shooting, 33% on threes. So it's a little bit lower than his last couple playoff runs, but 65% on twos. Okay. So Turner's a free agent, which means you're going to have to pay him a certain amount. And with the Lakers, I mean, that would probably have to be a sign and trade then, I would assume. Or he re-signs and then gets traded at the deadline, but now you're doing another midseason move. I guess between the two, I'd prefer Claxton. He's more of that lob threat. He's younger. I think he's better defensively. I think either one, though, like those might be my top 2 of like semi-realistic targets. So, but between the two, I would lean Claxton. Rip Van Winkle off the top rope. Would LA pivot to trade Luka for Giannis and hire Mike Malone? I do not. You're saying hire Mike Malone as head coach or as like an assistant? I would say no to both of these. Jose says the Lakers even have cap space returner. No, they do not. And that's another thing that whenever we're talking about some of these guys, like the Lakers don't have cap space. They're not projected to have cap space. They're projected to have potentially the non-taxpayer MLE, but then they are hard capped at the first apron, or they could have the taxpayer MLE and then they can go up to the second apron or like just under the second apron. But LeBron, I mean, there's some ways to work out the cap stuff to get a little bit of space, but not much. And even then, it could potentially come down to LeBron taking like a massive pay cut, which I have been on the record saying I'm skeptical of. Madison, if they blow Minnesota out in Game 5, maybe we have a slim chance. Look, I can say, so I covered Clippers Rockets in 2015, which was actually JJ on the Clippers, and they blew that 3-1 lead. And the Clippers went to Houston looking at it like, oh, like this game doesn't really matter. Like we're going to try for like a quarter for the first half, and then we'll come back to LA and finish it out like worst case. They got blown out that game. Then they went back to LA. They got up 19. They blew that game in the fourth. And then that was the Josh Smith, Corey Brewer game. And then they went to Houston and got waxed in Game 7. So you got to be careful if you're Minnesota to not do that. So, yeah, I mean, if Minnesota gets blown out and the Lakers have a monster bounce back performance, like that shifts the momentum for sure. Then all of a sudden the pressure's on, like, of course the pressure's on the Lakers to not, like, they lose, the season's over. But Minnesota also has a certain level of pressure to not lose. And then now you've lost 2 in a row. You're back in LA. Like, if they lose 2 in a row and they go back to LA, LA will be favored in Game 7, right or wrong. So, like, Minnesota has some pressure. Mario, Jovan, can the front office do something about the bad refs to avoid other huge mistakes against us? I mean, they can complain to the league, talk to the league, voice their displeasure, but it really is up to the refs. Tiffany, Buha, do you think Luka's conditioning is a problem? We thought LeBron would help fix it. I don't think it's as much of a problem as some people do. I think people look at how he looks and then like to make certain projections on that. I think it has been a bit of an issue. I'm not saying it hasn't been. I also think he probably needs more of an offseason to just get his body right coming off of the calf injury and, maybe not being in his typical or best shape this season. So I think for now, I would say it's a slight concern, but longer term, I think we have to see how he bounces back this offseason. Jay, would Jericho Sims be a good fit in the offseason? I am not a Jericho Sims guy, and I don't think he's been that good. Madison, bottom line, JJ needs to play Gabe, Vando, and Goodwin more. I would agree. I think Gabe should probably be 15 to 18 minutes. Vando and Goodwin 10 to 12 minutes. Because look, we could sit here and say like Vando 25 minutes, but like we know that's not going to happen. That's just not going to happen. So I'm trying to be like, when I give you guys these projections, I try to be realistic with like looking at how JJ views them and what could be kind of like a realistic adjustment for him, like tweaking it. So he told me Vando plays 12, Goodwin plays 10, Gabe plays 16. That's 38 minutes. And then you could take that away from the 5 starters to various degrees. LeBron plays 43, 42. Luka plays 42, 43. Austin plays 40. And then whatever's the remaining amount, you take some away from DFS and Rui. And yeah, I mean, the guys are going to be playing like 40 plus minutes probably still. Stephen Lee, Jovan, do you think Finch is just out coaching us by a lot, or is it just Ant's ascension into a scorer and playmaker that's killing us? I lean more the former. The latter. I think because there have been times where I think it's taken the Wolves a while to counter some of the blitzing from the Lakers or even not even just the blitzing, but let's go back even to the first couple games with the way LA was guarding Ant. And you knew if you went back and watched how LA has guarded certain stars and guarded Ant in that February 27th matchup, you knew that they were going to guard Ant that way. Then they guarded Ant that way in game 1, and they did not have an adjustment in game 2. So on the ledger of the series, I would say that Finch has made better tweaks and adjustments and has won the coaching battle with JJ up to this point. But I also think there's been a lot of low-hanging fruit that it took Minnesota a little bit longer to adjust with. Like, there were some subtle adjustments they made in game 1 with like flattening out the other 4 guys so that Ant had more space, or like clearing out on the wings. But then they didn't do that stuff as much in game 2. And they've had some weird regression at times with some of the things. I also think, again, I don't understand the hedging and blitzing in the third quarter. They got absolutely eviscerated and shredded by that. And they kept going to it. And it was like, it's one thing. I don't blame a coach if you try something out try out zone for a possession, try out a blitz for a possession, even a couple of possessions, like get a little bit of a sample size with it. But if you're doing it 6, 7, 8 times in a row and the other team is either getting wide open shots or like good looks, and you just don't know how to you can't contain them, I think you got to stop running that. And I think they stuck with it for a bit too long. And it almost cost them the game, because that's how LA rebuilt that lead. They got off to the quick start in the quarter, hit a few shots, and then that's when they started doing that. And then it was like the Wolves were scoring and like staying in it, but then the Lakers were also scoring and keeping that advantage around like double digits. So I think Finch has coached a good series, but I think there's been some stuff that he's done that I think he's to an earlier point I made in the show. I think he's let foul trouble affect his rotations a little bit too much, especially with Naz Reid. I think he has played Naz Reid a little bit too less. Like, yes, he had the fresh legs in game 4, but I think Naz Reid should be playing in like the mid-20s every game at like a minimum, or at least somewhere in like that 22 to 28 range. And I believe in game 4, he was in the high teens, somewhere around like 19, 20. So like, I just think he's playing Naz Reid a little bit too little. Could play. I think Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert probably both should be playing a little bit less overall, but like those are small things. I think the biggest thing has been Ant. Ant has gone to an incredible level. Ant is looking like, I mean, if Ant's going to play like this, you could make the case for him as high as like 3rd or 4th best player in the league, depending on how you want to rank and slot certain guys. Like, I'd still put Jokic 1. I think Shea and Giannis are potentially 2, 3 in some order. I think Luka's in that conversation. I think Ant is entering that conversation. Steph, LeBron, Tatum, those are probably the top 8 in some order. Kawhi, with the way that he's playing. So like, there's a lot of talent in the top 10 right now, but Ant is looking special. And I think he's taken a leap. And it would be nuts if he beats. So he beat KD last year in round 1. He beat Jokic in round 2. If he beats LeBron and Luka in this first round, and then he beats, say, Steph in the conference semifinals, like that would just be wild. Like he's kind of, we've been talking about the old guard versus the new guard, and then he's coming in and he's slaying the old guard, and he's kind of establishing himself as the dude. Of course, if he doesn't win the championship, there's a ceiling to like how high he's climbing this season, but he's getting there. He's having a special series for sure. All right, I'm going to go about 5 more minutes, and then I will wrap. I see I missed a couple super chats. Jackson, what's up, Jovan? How do you feel about Mike Conley? Like for the Lakers or just like in general with the series? Because I think Mike Conley on the floor is a good thing for the Lakers. I want to quickly pull up the plus minus for the Wolves in terms of their team plus minus, but I'm going to assume Mike Conley is lower on that list. And I believe, so here's the Wolves in terms of plus minus for the series. Jaden plus 39, Ant plus 28, Nas plus 26, Julius plus 24. Mike Conley is actually tied for fifth with Na at plus 13. So 5-6. And then Gobert is plus 4. And then Dante is actually minus 10. Dante is the only top 8 guy with a negative point differential. That's interesting. But Rudy being lower makes sense to me. Conley's still, there's a bit of a gap there between the top 4 have been Jaden, Ant, Nas, and Julius. And I think those have been their 4 best players in the series. Conley's shooting 27% on threes, 38% overall. So, yeah, I think Conley's been their worst player among the top 8. I think he's a defensive liability. He's not shooting the ball well, and he's just a little bit too small. I think the Lakers should target him more. I don't really know. Like, I will say when he's been targeted or switched on to guys, I think he's held up like decently well considering his physical limitations. I think he's pressured the ball and like met force with force. So I think that's been notable. But yeah, I mean, nice dude. I did a story on him for ESPN in 2017. We went shopping together. Ever since then, we've always been cool. So like on a personal level, arguably the nicest guy I've met in the NBA, like bar none. But he's in his late 30s, and I think I think they should look to reduce his minutes a little bit. Danica, thank you for the super chat. What are your thoughts on the lack of nuance in the TV media space when it comes to dissecting Laker games? It is disheartening to listen to as a fan. Well, that's what you have my platform for and Buha's block. And, I try to bring you guys nuance and balanced perspective as best I can. I think covering the Lakers is low-hanging fruit for a lot of these shows, a lot of these TV and podcasts and different platforms. They know if they talk Lakers, they're going to get clicks. And if you make bold proclamations, JJ Redick ruined the series and LeBron isn't clutch and Luka's out of shape and the Lakers lost the Luka trade and this and that. And it's like, come on. That's just all not true. Like LeBron has more go-ahead field goals in the last 30 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever the stat is, than anybody in playoff history. I think JJ's done a really good job overall this season. I think there's been some things he needs to learn from this series, but I wouldn't say he's coached like a bad series by any means. And Luka is averaging 30 plus points on efficient shooting in this year. Like I just think a lot of the stuff is just talking just to talk. So yeah, I mean, I would just say ignore the stuff that, like, I think at this point you kind of know which shows, which people say which things, and it's a bit of a shtick. They know they're going to get eyeballs. They know they're going to get views and clicks and attention, and if you don't give them attention, eventually they'll go away. Collegial, thank you for the super chat. The Lakers lose this series. It was because of that game 1 loss. Also, this series should be tied if it wasn't for Luka's stomach bug. That said, Lakers in 7 is not crazy to say with 2 home games left. What part of game 1? Because I think with the way Minnesota shot the ball and the way the Lakers shot the ball, even if the Lakers approach the game with the requisite force and focus, I think it's a closer game for sure. I don't think they lose by 22, but I think they probably lose it with the way Minnesota played. I just think it would have been like a better loss. I agree. I think with the second point, like I think they're arguably up 3-1 if Luka doesn't get the stomach bug. But I think it would be 2-2. And Lakers in 7 is not crazy. It's unlikely, but it's not crazy. RGN Cal 4. You think Turner, Schroeder, MLE 15. You think Turner, Schroeder, MLE trade 15 for Kessler / Sexton. I'm a little confused on how they're getting all these players here. I think the Kessler ship has sailed. I think it's going to cost at least 2 firsts, and they don't have 2 firsts to trade. Turner is going to also be an expensive sign and trade, so they wouldn't be able to get Turner and Schroeder most likely in that case. So I'm going to I would say one of these 3 different transactions is possible, but not all 3. Tai Rob P roster building is costing us, not JJ. I don't want to say roster building, but what I would say is my biggest takeaway from this series is I do think the roster, if we're doing the blame pie chart, I think the roster is the biggest issue. And I made this point last night with 16 game players versus 82 game players. I think I maybe was a little bit too harsh on Gabe. Like I'll say the Lakers have 6 16 game players, which would be the 5 starters for the second half plus Gabe. But I think Luka and LeBron are, and even Austin, I would say, are slotted properly, but you need certain things around those guys. You need size and length and athleticism and defense. I don't think the Lakers have the requisite level of that around those 3, if those are going to be your 3 best players. But then you look at, in theory, Rui's their 4th best player, DFS is their 5th best player, Gabe is their 6th best player. And I think all those guys are at least 1 spot too high, if not a couple spots too high. And I think on it, like those guys within like a championship level rotation, I think Rui is more of a 5th starter or like 6th man type on a championship team. I think DFS I think he could be a 5th starter depending on your other 4 guys, but also probably more of like a high end bench guy. I think Gabe is more of like, ideally like an 8th man, maybe a 7th man, which you could argue he kind of is, but I think he's a little bit, Lakers are a little bit too dependent on him. And then I don't think guys like Vando and Goodwin would be playing for, they wouldn't play for Boston, they wouldn't play for OKC, they wouldn't play for Cleveland. So like, I don't think they'd play on the Clippers. Warriors, like if you go down the list of like some of the better teams in the league, I think the Lakers are playing guys that, especially the back end of the rotation, that wouldn't play for those teams. So I think the lack of depth, especially the lack of 2-way depth, like there was actually an interesting story that's been circulating on X that I've really resonated with the more I've thought about it. And it was about how comparing basketball and soccer, and that basketball used to be a strong link sport. And what that meant was the team often in the playoffs with the better player or the best player would often win the series. And we have a sample size of NBA history with this. Whereas a team like, or sport like soccer, the weakest player on the field, whichever team has the weaker player, that often is like the entry point into that team on either side of the field. And like, that's where usually the team that has like the weaker player or 2 will lose. And I'm not a soccer expert, so I don't know if that's like accurate or not, but that was kind of the argument. And updating that in 2025, the updated version was like basketball is actually becoming a weak link sport where if you're ranking the 10 guys on the floor at any given time, the team that has the 10th best guy, or maybe even the 9th and 10th best guy, like that team is going to be at a disadvantage. And I think that's one thing that the Lakers have really struggled with in this series is like they have often had the 9th and 10th best guys on the floor in this series. Like there have been stretches where Luka's been the best player. There's been stretches when Ant's been the best player. There's been stretches when LeBron's been the best player. There's even been stretches where Julius Randle has been the best player. So like that stuff kind of fluctuates. That there's a general top four. Then the middle point, maybe it's a Jaden McDaniels game. Austin's had some good stretches. Nas has obviously had some big stretches. So like the middle has fluctuated a little bit too. But the back end of the worst players on the court, Minnesota's worst players have been better than the Lakers' worst players, and the Lakers have often been the team with the worst player on the floor, and I think that has added up and hurt them. And I think they have too many one-way guys, and I think they need to look in the mirror and make some significant roster adjustments, not to the top guys. I think it's more to the middle and the back end of the roster. Like, at some point, I think it was going to come back to haunt them of like, they can't really play players 10 through 15 on this team. And that's a problem. Bowen, thank you for the super chat. I don't see a question, but I appreciate you. Will Brotherson, thank you for the super chat. I know Luka conditioning stuff has been overblown, but have you heard anything about Luka maybe joining LeBron for a full offseason program this summer? Keep hearing that, but only speculation. I have not heard that, but I would not be surprised by that. I think that's within the realm of possibility, but I think it's probably too, like, we probably would have to talk to Luka at the end of the season, whenever that is. But I think it would do, like, remember, LeBron has trained with other guys before. He trained with Rui after the 2023 season, so I think it would be good for Luka. Chris Wallace, thank you for the super chat. Do you think the Wolves can have some regression? They went from 24th ranked in clutch to lights out in the last 4 minutes. I mean, I thought there would be at least one game in this series that was close where the Wolves kind of blew it with some of their decision making, but that just hasn't been the case. They've been awesome in crunch time and awesome in the fourth quarter, so certainly possible, but I also just wonder if they're taking a leap collectively as a team and with Ant as their leader. Like, I think it's possible. So theoretically they should be, but clutch is also one of those things that's like, it's almost one of the things that I would say is like the least sticky potentially from the regular season to the playoffs, just in terms of if you grow as a team in terms of your crunch time execution, like you can be better than you were in the regular season. Whereas it's harder to grow in terms of like, you're a bad 3-point shooting team in the regular season, and then you become a good 3-point shooting team in the playoffs. It's harder to be a bad turnover team that suddenly becomes a good turnover team. Like, you have certain things baked into your team DNA, but clutch time, a lot of it's just like decision making and execution. And the Wolves were a good team. They were top 10 on both sides of the ball. So it's not like they can't do that over the course of a 48-minute game. It's just, they have kind of struggled with that in the clutch, but they're also, I mean, like game 3, there wasn't much clutch because they just ran away with that game around that 4:37 mark. And this last game, though, there was a lot of clutch time, and the Lakers almost won, but they came up short. So, yeah, I mean, the Wolves have been awesome in the clutch, though. Kron151. I'm a Wolves fan, and the only reason I'm listening to you is because you're factually objective about the team you cover without trying to use data to overly skew your point. Thank you. I appreciate that. I have noticed there have been a lot of Wolves fans in here, and most of them have not been kind. So I appreciate you being kind about it and seeing that I'm trying to be as objective and honest and balanced as possible. And that's really the only way I know how to cover things, or try to. I'm not perfect. I have my blind spots, but I try. All right. My wife is home, and I have not seen her yet since I've been back. So I'm going to spend some time with her, but I appreciate you all for rocking with me on a Monday afternoon. I will be back tomorrow, either with a new episode, but it's either going to be here. I'll ask the chat quickly before I get out of here. We recorded our beat writer roundtable episode on Saturday. I wanted to know if you guys want me to drop it tomorrow or not. I felt like the timing might not be appropriate with the Lakers potentially on the way out. Like, do you guys want me to do an episode on a mailbag or adjustments, or do you want the beat writers and our roundtable to come out. I wasn't sure if I should hold that till potentially after the season or once we have a better sense of where things are going. So I see Rolla says drop it now. Rip Van Winkle says tomorrow. Gorilla says adjustments. People saying drop it. All right. Then Jake from State Farm says after the series is done tomorrow, beat writers. All right. I'll put it up for a vote, as Jake suggests, but it seems like people in general want me to drop it. So that's good to know. But appreciate you all. I will be wrapping here. Thank you all for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. Let's get those likes up for those who are still watching. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tomorrow with a new episode of Buha's Block. I will talk to you then.